Hello, everybody, and welcome to the next edition of our digital dialogue series. I'm joined by Pier Posthuma de Boer, who is Feadship's Refit and Services Director. And Pier, just how are you, firstly?
Good morning, Rory. I am fine, thanks. Thank you so much also for having me here today. It'll be fun to have a chat about Refit and Services. How are you?
Great. I mean, well, England knocked Germany out of the Euros, so I couldn't be better, I don't think.
I'm sure we won't be discussing football today. The Netherlands being knocked out yesterday, so I prefer to stick to other topics.
Absolutely. So, well, let me start with a very easy question then. What is your greatest frustration with the industry?
Well, Rory, I expected that question a little bit, seeing other interviews that you've done lately. And you know what? I'm not a guy with many frustrations. I think it's a waste of time. So I'm not frustrated much. I am confused every now and again, or astonished rather. So one of the things that gets to me the most is over the last couple of weeks I've been traveling again, seeing industry partners and competitors and other players and chatting with all these people makes me realize how many ambitious, honest, capable, hardworking people we have in the industry. And I am honestly super enthusiastic about the level that we've managed to bring the industry to the last 5 years. And yet, collectively, we seem to still not be able to really make superyacht owners happy about refit and maintenance. So I still think it's a topic that many superyacht owners do not enjoy discussing or managing. Even though I think it could be something more enjoyable, especially if you compare it to superyacht owners building a new yacht here at the Feadship shipyards. If you see how much fun that is for many of our clients, then why shouldn't refit and maintenance be fun? And so it's astonishment about so many capable people not yet being able to actually have more fun.
And where do you think the solution lies to that then? I mean, what are the breakdowns? What are the typical frustrations that owners encounter?
To be honest, I think so. The typical frustrations that owners encounter is lack of predictability, lack of reliability of the outcome of refit and services programs or projects. So I think it's still owners that feel that they are not getting what they're paying for, or at least they are not getting what they want at the time that they need it. So that's, I think, the frustration, and then how that exists. Looking from a bit of a distance at the industry, I think it's because we are in a transitional phase. We're trying now all together to make the industry more professional, where it really wasn't very professional maybe 10, 20, 30 years ago, in the sense that it was organized on a small scale locally, and now we're trying to organize it on a big scale globally. And we're trying very hard to adapt a system rather than really change it and make it more appropriate for current times.
And so you mentioned the element of reliability, and obviously the classic thing with refits are the surprises that occur. But you mentioned changing the whole system rather than just changing elements of refit. So could you give me a bit of an insight into what you mean by that? I mean, the title of this is Changing the Game, and when we've spoken previously, it's about not looking at refit as an individual instance, but as a far broader element of the ownership experience.
Yes, and that's exactly the point we need to get to, I think. At this moment in time, we're still approaching most refit and services projects as one-offs, as incidents that occur every so often in time, and that we then start organizing just before. And that really doesn't make much sense, knowing that almost every superyacht goes through the same cycles. We can predict more or less when certain maintenance and repair works are going to be done, and we can plan for that. The problem is that there's no real players in the industry right now that are responsible for the whole wider picture. So we're all playing our part, but we're not bringing it together. And I think that's exactly where new build shipyards like Feadship should come in. And if you say changing the game, I think it's really a responsibility for new build shipyards like Feadship to step up, as we've been doing the last couple of years already in the refit and services business, and to play the role of maybe, we like to call ourselves system integrators as a shipyard, but maybe we should become industry integrators. where we actually create a framework for our yachts that we build for maintenance and refitting over a period of 5 to 10 years that will then allow all the other players to interact in that framework in a more efficient way.
Do you think that at times, we talked about that idea of it being a single project, that the market lacks a sense of responsibility? I mean, I can imagine examples where a client comes to a yard, they perhaps buy a yacht that may be too big for them, they won't understand the operational costs, they won't understand the maintenance costs. Then when something goes wrong, they don't go back to the yard, they go to a one-off refitter or whoever it may be, or it ends back up on the market. There seems to be this attitude of sort of one in, one out, where you get a project done and it's out of the way, and then you move on to the next one, it's out of the way. But I know a lot of new build yards also do refit, but I feel like at times the market needs to take greater responsibility for its products.
That's a very fair question, and I think what the main distinction there is between just refitting players and new build shipyards in the refitting market is that new build shipyards like Feadship have a responsibility to our clients which is much longer than a single project. So the Feadship Refit and Services department really exists mainly as a tool to keep Feadship owners happy. That's my purpose in life, is to keep Feadship owners happy. And that's the whole, foundation under everything we do. And obviously, I'd like to make some money when I do it. So I'd like to, do a proper refit project and earn some money from it. But it's not the point. The point is that a Feadship owner has a pleasurable experience, likes using the Feadship, and will then buy a new Feadship, and then will tell his or her friends to also buy a Feadship. So our perspective in the refit industries is different from that of many other players that are really in the business to do, as many projects as they can to the, obviously also they want to do those projects to the best of their ability, but it's more a short-term view. For us, it's more a long-term relationship view.
Do you think that the model that Feadship adopts in terms of looking after Feadship's owners, they refit the yachts and they want them to buy a new project for Feadship, as the long goal, it's all about client retention, ownership experience, and everything that comes with that. But would you like to see more of your competitors, let's say, adopt a similar model? Do you think that this is something that should be more widely adopted? Obviously, you speak very passionately about the perspective of Feadship, but when we're talking about sort of general market progress, do you think the attitude that you guys have would be that other businesses would do well to adopt?
Definitely. Yes, I definitely think that's the way to go, because at the end of the day, what we need to do as an industry is make it attractive for owners to have a super yacht. That's absolutely clear. And I think many of the players in the refit industry have exactly the same view. So we don't have a conflict there. Everybody agrees. It's just a matter of being able to achieve that. And I think super yacht builders like Feadship, but also our competitors, are in a unique position where we have the relationship with the client from the build. We have all the knowledge about the asset, the yacht, because we've built it. Yeah. We have all the relationships in the industry with the co-builders and with the refit partners that can help us to maintain it. So we have a responsibility really to bring that together. And if new build shipyards don't do it, who else is going to do it? I know that there's, obviously a lot of market players trying to play their part, management companies and also captains and crew themselves that are doing terrific jobs. But that most of those parties lack a certain element which new build shipyards all have, and we can implement that from the day of delivery of a new boat, and continue it for 5 to 10 years through a certain process, which I think it's really a responsibility of the new build shipyards to do it, and not just Feadship, but any new build shipyard that wants to retain its customers.
I mean, one of the topics that's talked about a lot in the yachting industry is the idea of finding new demographics of owners, new areas of ownership, what size ranges they're interested in. Do we need to evolve the model? But we've known for a long time that this industry has been almost kept afloat, excuse the pun, by repeat buyers. Repeat buyers are the foundation of this market, really, the people that have stayed in, had a good experience and want to maintain. And what you're talking about is essentially turning more ultra high net worth individuals into repeat buyers and keeping them within the market, because we've seen at times how quickly boats end up going up for sale. and it could be so many different stages of the process, but it only takes one to put off a buyer who could have been sort of in the market for life. So I guess what you're really talking about, as you said, is just keeping the client happy and keeping them in the market.
Yeah, well, that's exactly it. And to go back to your first question, and my confusion about all of this is that we are all actually trying to do that, right? So I'm not blaming anyone for not trying to do it. It's just a matter of we seem not to be capable yet collectively to achieve that. And that's just the interesting part. That's why I don't like to speak about frustration. I like to speak about a challenge. And what, this gets me out of bed every day to think about how can we, limit the number of people that have a bad experience like this. That's the whole point of it.
How important do you think it is? Obviously, the new build shipyard is often the sort of the central point of the market. It sort of encompasses a lot of what everyone's buying into. But how important is the information that is coming from around it in terms of owners, teams, captains, whoever it may be, to explain the realities of ownership? If they introduce a Feadship, for instance, have ops and maintenance already on the horizon to almost create a new mold of owner that doesn't just approach things in the way that previous yachts have done in terms of one in, one out, refit yard, book in very late, no maintenance schedule, small warranties, a lot of panic. Is there an educational process where we can have a not next generation, but a new generation of owners who are more educated from the offset about the typical life cycle and how to maintain and how to stay engaged?
I think there is, and to be honest, I think it's also already going on. This is exactly what's happening. We, especially Feadship captains and crew, and also the management companies that are involved, they are so incredibly important also to teach both ways. They are the first point of contact for owners, so it's incredibly important that they can explain to owners how operating and maintaining a superyacht really works, just to make sure that you get the right expectations. They are also very important to tell us shipyards how operating a superyacht really works, because at the end of the day, we know a lot about building and maintaining a superyacht, but operating it is really a totally different world, and they are the ones that can educate us about, look, this is how we operate the boat, and we need this and this and that from you to be able to do that better. And they are playing this role, and I've seen a big change going on the last 5 years in how well they play that role, simply because they can only play that role if they get the information they need to do it. So we have to start by really educating captains and crew in the sense of what we are capable of doing, not educating them in their job. They are way better at that than we are. We need to be honest and tell them, look, this is what we can offer, and this is also what we can't offer, because then they can create the right expectations with owners, and then owners slowly start to understand, yes, if you buy a superyacht, especially ones as complicated as a Feadship, every now and again something will break. That's nothing to be ashamed of. That's normal. But if we pretend that it doesn't happen, then owners get frustrated if it does. Rather than if we are honest about it and say, look, sometimes that happens, but luckily Feadship is the best shipyard in the world and will come running and will fix it straight away. Now that's an honest message, and it's also one that creates honest expectations.
I mean, something we spoke about when we talked about the Istros project previously was how important trust was between the ownership team and the Feadship team for the entire process. It was an incredibly complex project. I mean, went right back to bare hull, didn't it, 1950s, and now it's an ultra modern in very many ways, but maintained its sort of aesthetic. But I just wanted to pick up on that sort of trust element, and you were mentioning with the warranties and fixing things and the relationship that's built between the yard and the owner. How important is trust to everything we're trying to achieve?
Quite frankly, I think it begins and it ends with trust and with relationships. So and that's also interesting. I obviously there's been many interviews the last year about how COVID had changed the world and how we've learned to work virtually like we are doing now. And one thing that I have learned as well is operationally, this is perfect. Video conferencing works great if you need to get something done. But if you want to create trust and if you want to create a relationship, then you need to really see each other. You need to be in the room with each other. You need to feel each other's presence and really understand each other. And that level of trust is something that is the first point on my agenda with any internal meeting that we have with the Feadship Refit and Services teams, all these guys and girls, it's always about, look, make sure that you get a friendly relationship with your clients, with the people that you're trying to help, that they understand you, that you understand them, and that you trust each other first. And then if you've got that down, then you can talk about the boat.
Yeah.
But the other way around never works, because it's a people's business, and we need to really understand that even though it's all about a super yacht, it's still a people's business. And if we start with the trust, and if we start with the understanding, and we know what the important parts are on the level of our counterparts, then we can start to add benefit. So that's also the approach we have from Feadship Refit and Services. Every Feadship in our fleet that has ever dealt with Feadship post-delivery has a personal service coordinator that they know by name. They have their mobile phone number, and so they're never calling Feadship. They're calling a person that they trust, because they know them, because they've been dealing with them for many years.
Sure. And let's move on slightly to talk about the sort of future of Refit, if you will. I mean, we've mentioned the warranty element of it, and I'm sure you have thoughts on that moving forward. But obviously, there's issues of sustainability, and also one of the notes I have here from our sort of previous conversation was the importance of knowledge and information. So I'd just like you to share some views with me on those.
Yes, well, I think I'm very happy to touch on those topics, because it's exactly where Feadship is different from many other companies, right? I think what Feadship can bring to the refitting industry is brain power. We have hundreds of very smart engineers working for our company in the Netherlands that are continuously working on developments for our new build fleet, but that we can also apply in the refit and services industry, and that we need to apply to make it more professional. So if you've been watching our unique video conferences that we've organized over the last 2-3 weeks, where we explain a little bit more about the technical developments that Feadship has been working on, there's a number of those that are exceptionally well applicable in the refit and services industry. For instance, remote monitoring systems, where every Feadship that leaves the yard now is equipped with systems that allows us, if the client wants, to monitor them remotely and to be able to predict failures in time, to be able to assist when failures occur virtually. And those kind of systems are really, really helpful to take the next step into superyacht maintenance, because it will allow us, first of all, to start to understand failures better, to prevent them, but also to start planning our maintenance more accurately, even though now we already sort of know what kind of maintenance we're going to do when. Having the actual data from sensors on board is really going to help us to take that to the next level. And into a program where we basically say, look, if you're going to leave the shipyard with your new built Feadship, we'll warrant it for 5 years or for 10 years, because we know a lot from the yard. We can monitor it at a distance. We have a dealer network where we can actually help you on location, and it's fine. You can just have the peace of mind of Feadship support for 5 to 10 years. Why not? Technology allows for it these days, and we should get it into the market as soon as possible.
Are owners buying into this when they come for? You said that obviously Feadship is primarily a new build outfit, but obviously the refit services has kicked on quite significantly in recent years. But when an owner comes through the door today, say, is the refit element of it all part of the package and the deal? Do you find that during, whether it's contractual or not, would you feel that the majority of Feadship owners who are receiving new builds feel so confident in your refit programs that they will come back to you? Or is there still the classic issue of availability, cost, whatever it may be? I mean, no one's going to come to Feadship to have a tiny trinket changed, because it would be a complete waste of time getting all the way up there. But is that part of the model that owners get now when they leave?
Definitely. So I think one of the major changes that I have seen in our company over the last maybe year or two is that being able to offer the support package post-delivery is part of the new build sales process now, where it's one of the unique selling points where Feadship is different from other new build shipyards, that if you buy a Feadship, you also buy a peace of mind for the years after. You buy support, you buy value retention. We have statistics now showing that superyacht owners that buy a Feadship and have it maintained with Feadship involvement get higher resale prices when they sell the boat.
Mhm.
And it's something that we all know, but now we actually have data showing that. So it's really, so it's definitely part of our sales program to identify those options. And then on the other side, the second part of your question, I've listened to the interview you did with Rob Papsworth of MB92, and you asked him, are you scared of the competition from the new build shipyards in Refit? And I think he very, very eloquently explained what the situation is. New build shipyards have a couple of slots for big refits, which we do, which Feadship does. I think Feadship is different from the other new build shipyards. We only apply those for Feadships, with one or two incidents where we might also help a Feadship owner with another yacht. But it's meant for Feadships, and only a couple per year because we don't have any more slots. So in that sense, there is no, there's no intention to have hundreds of Feadships sailing back to the Netherlands for 2-week maintenance periods. Now, it may happen every now and again if, by coincidence that works out in the program. But most of those type of jobs we need to do in the Mediterranean or in the Caribbean or in Florida, wherever these boats are. And that's exactly why we have cooperations with our 4 service network partners, Amigo, MB92, Monaco Marine, and Rybovich, where we can actually provide maintenance support by Feadship on those locations where the boats, typically sail, and therefore where they want to be helped.
In terms of, even if you just look at the numbers, the global fleet is obviously growing in terms of unit, but it's also growing in terms of average size and complexity as well. And so even if businesses like Feadship do take on 2 major refits a year or whatever it may be, there is a lot of vessels going around, a lot of big projects going around, and the fleet is outgrowing the infrastructure quickly. So as you say, people like Rob Papworth at MB92, I don't think they'll be concerned about their scope for taking on big projects, because there's a lot of big boats out there and a lot of them need a lot of work.
Yeah, I think, obviously there's a lot of development going on, especially in the Mediterranean and in Florida, with new ship lifts being built and new facilities and new dry docks. And I think it's great. It's great for Feadship owners, because the more choice there is, the better. And these are amazing facilities that can offer, a good infrastructure for servicing that Feadship then can organize locally. And we're doing the same in the Netherlands. So I think at the end, superyacht owners are benefiting. If there's a choice where to go, then they will be able to make the choice that fits them best at that moment. I think the most important thing for us now is to organize the process, how those choices are made. So at this point in time, I think we're not doing that very well. Most superyacht owners require their crew or their management companies to, if they start a refit, to ask 3 or 4 quotes from 3 or 4 different shipyards. Then they start comparing all of those, which is a lot of work for the shipyards and for the management teams. At the end of choosing one, often based on price and timing, and then proceeding with the refit at that location, and then do the same process again 2 years later for the next refit. And just listening to me talk about that process, you will understand that there's so much wasted time and energy in that, because 75% of all the quotes made and assessed are not being executed, which means that all the time and energy and costs have to be covered by the smaller percentage of projects that are being executed. And I think that's just a waste of time and energy, and we're not managing that well as an industry. So I think actually that's one of the typical things, that by creating long-term maintenance programs based on frameworks that new build shipyards apply, we can hopefully get some of those inefficiencies out, and thereby making the whole process cheaper for everyone, and hopefully therefore also for the owners.
Absolutely. And as a sort of final note, I know this is something you're very passionate about, but what is Feadship Refit Services doing by way of sustainability, and whose responsibility is sustainability? It's a slightly loaded question, because I feel like the answer is everybody's, but from your perspective, is it client-led? Is it Feadship-led? What's being done, and how are you going about it?
Yes, well, it's a very loaded question. Yes, it's definitely clearly everybody's responsibility. There's 2 sides to this. Most efficiently, we would like it to be client pushed. If a client is really passionate about building or refitting a sustainable superyacht, that's for us the most efficient way to make a yacht sustainable. Now, that's maybe a part of our clients are like that. Others are less interested in the topic or less aware of the topic. And I think that's where Feadship has an own responsibility to push the sustainable agenda, and especially in the refit context as well. So you will have heard many interviews from Henk de Vries specifically, but also from Jan Bart, the two CEOs of Feadship, about the sustainable drive in the new build Feadship category, and we apply the same in our refit strategies. Again, where can Feadship distinguish itself? It's by knowledge. It's by engineering, and it's by really renewing our fleet. So I see it as a great responsibility for Feadship Refit and Services to offer refit packages to our fleet that actually make it more sustainable. And that can be very small, from just adjusting the main engine so that you can use biofuels, to very big, taking out the whole propulsion system and include electric drive or anything in between. And that will depend on the owner, of course, at the end, what is the owner interested in and where is he or she willing to pay for. But we will definitely be pushing this agenda, because as an industry player, you just have, especially as a player as big as Feadship, we have and we feel the responsibility to push this forward as much as we can.
There's, from my perspective, I'm glad I'm not the one who has to do it. There seems to be a slight challenge as far as refit yards and new build yards alike talk a lot about sustainability and their willingness to engage and their ability to engage. But as you sort of said, it's in the ideal scenario, it's client-led. I guess my question is, to what extent is it being client-led? The fact that it's ideal doesn't mean it's actually happening a lot. Are you getting a lot of owners coming in saying, I want to be as sustainable as possible? I mean, I'm sure they know all the systems that exist, because as we know, super yachts are bloody complex. I would hate to start even doing it myself, and I've been working in this industry for a number of years. So as a new owner, for instance, they might not know what's available, but are you genuinely feeling that there is the demand for it? There was the news recently about the teak from Myanmar is now illegal to import, which is a great thing. It's no longer funding a military junta. There was the environmental issues around anyway, but we know that yachts have used a lot of teak, and we know that one of the reasons they do it is because owners keep asking for teak. So when I was talking about whose responsibility is it, and the ideal scenario that you mentioned is the owners demanding it or wanting it, because you guys will be ready and raring to go. To what extent are owners asking for sustainable systems and sustainable solutions?
They definitely are. I think one of the examples you mentioned before is our refit of motor yacht Istros, which we equipped with a gas turbine rather than diesel generators, which is a lot more environmentally friendly, and many other smart solutions to make the yacht more sustainable. And there's a number of refit clients that we have that are really asking us, okay, please, if not, I'm going to take this old Feadship and refit it completely, then please, make it as sustainable as possible. And from two perspectives, just because it's the right thing to do, and also to make it future-proof. Because at the end of the day, we all know, legislation is going to impose this on us sooner or later, and it is already doing so in many ways. So you would be unwise to now do a very big refit on an old Feadship and not at least take the sustainable aspects into account. So it's definitely owner driven from that perspective. Look, in the maintenance and the everyday things, it's a matter of mindset of the operators more. It's crew and it's management that are maybe pushed by owners to actually do the right thing and keep that in the back of their mind with those kind of jobs. We see it more in the very big refits where we have an opportunity to really change the yacht and make it more sustainable.
Perfect. Well, I think that's pretty much everything I had to ask you. Thank you very, very much for joining me. I appreciate it as ever. And I'm hoping we can grab a beer soon and work on that trust you were talking about. I know you said that Zooms and webinars aren't as effective, so we'll have to grab a drink in person soon and talk about a few other bits and bobs.
I am very happy that you have that as the most important takeaway from this conversation.
Absolutely. Well, trust, as you said, is the foundation of every good project.
Definitely. So thanks for your time. Thanks for your trust, Rory, and we'll be in touch.
Cheers. Speak soon. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.